This is CNN.
Former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson confronted in the courtroom by the woman who accuses him of rape.
Taking the sales out of the life of luxury, the impact of the luxury tax. Welcome back to Early Prime. I'm Lou Waters.
I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Also ahead, a difficult choice confronting stroke victims, drug treatment or surgery.
First, a check of our top stories. The beauty pageant contestant who brought rape charges against Mike Tyson began telling her side of the story late this afternoon. The alleged rape victim took the witness stand and told the court that what started out as an invitation to visit Tyson's hotel room ended in a brutal assault. Before she took the stand, the defense and prosecution gave their opening statements. Tyson's lawyers say the woman consented to having sex. Prosecutors claim Tyson brutally attacked her, tore off her clothes, and ignored her pleas to stop. Tyson is accused of raping the 18-year-old pageant contestant in his hotel room last July. He could get up to 63 years in prison if convicted. Jeffrey Dahmer's lawyer says a fixation on Satan drove Dahmer to his grisly crimes. Dahmer's parents sat in the Milwaukee courtroom today as both the prosecution and defense gave their opening statements. Dahmer has pleaded guilty to killing and mutilating 15 young men and boys. Defense lawyer Gerald Boyle said Dahmer became obsessed with the Satan character in the movie Exorcist 3. Boyle is trying to convince the 14-member jury that Dahmer was insane when he committed the murders. Prosecutors contend Dahmer is troubled but sane.
You see, the case is over. Mr. Dahmer has pled guilty to these 15 homicides. The case continues because under the law, as I have said, we are trying to find out the mind of this man. Was he evil or was he sick?
Mr. Dahmer feared being caught in the killing a victim or in the presence of a drugged, comatose, or dead or dismembered victim. Didn't want to be caught there because he knew it was wrong.
Relatives of the victims listened as the defense lawyer gave graphic descriptions of how Dahmer tried to preserve his victims as zombies to use them for sex. Many of the victims' relatives attended a briefing by the prosecuting attorney beforehand to prepare them for the gruesome details.
Authorities in Colton, California shot and killed the man they say commandeered a Greyhound bus in Arizona and drove it some 320 miles home. CNN's Ann McDermott reports.
The wild ride ended for Ronaldo Gonzalez outside his home in Colton, California, where police say he finally brought the bus to a halt.
Struggle ensued between the suspect and officers who were pursuing him. Shots were fired. He was transported to the Loma Linda Community Hospital, where he later died.
The 8 passengers on board the Greyhound bus, which included an 18-month-old baby, were shaken by their ordeal, but not harmed. It all began in Phoenix, where a bus scheduled to head east to St. Louis began heading west on Interstate 10. And police say Gonzalez was at the wheel. The spectacular chase lasted about 4.5 hours and covered 300 miles. Police tried to halt the progress of the bus by putting spikes in the road. It didn't work, and the bus continued to speed along, trailed by several police cars and a television news cameraman.
We thought maybe 20 miles out of town they'd have him. And then the 20 miles turned into 40, and 40 turned into 100, and 100 turned into 200, and we were starting to wonder if and when they were going to get this guy finally.
A couple of hours before sunrise, the driver finally pulled off of the highway near Colton and drove into the quiet residential area.
The helicopter woke us up.
Yeah.
And
I looked out the window and there was the bus was going by.
She saw the bus going by
with all kinds of cops behind it.
Tailgating them.
And then he told me get down. And then like 5 minutes later or something, there was 2 shots.
Among the police agencies at the scene, the Colton Police Department, San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, Arizona Law Enforcement, and the FBI. One officer said the investigation of the shooting could last for hours, it could last for days. And as grieving relatives gathered, a neighbor who'd talked with some of them talked with reporters.
They said that he was in Phoenix at the time, and he was going crazy, and he wanted to get home, and he is a bus driver.
Nothing like this has ever happened before in the quiet neighborhood, said neighbors, and they hope nothing like it ever happens again. Ann McDermott, CNN, Colton, California.
Environmental radicals are vowing to take to the woods to protect the spotted owl in western Oregon. Nearly 1,000 people gathered yesterday at a rally in Portland to protest a move to open spotted owl habitats to logging. Speakers representing the group Earth First say if the loggers win, the group will retreat to the woods and fight. In the past, Earth First has inserted spikes in trees to discourage loggers from cutting them.
Congress opened hearings today on the new White House budget proposals. The Bush administration is eyeing tax cuts, but Democrats warn against going too far to win voter popularity on that score. One Democratic leader says he fears a repeat of the Reagan-era tax cut, charging that's what led to the tripling of the national debt.
I guess what's scary about this proposal is the fact that it basically, by presenting a long shopping list of various tax cuts, creates the temptation to get back into the same bidding war that we saw in '81. And having been there, I guess my first question is, how do you stop that from happening again?
I don't have a concrete proposal that would sound anything other than trite. I do believe that the most obvious thing is we should stick to the discipline of the Budget Enforcement Act, or if we are going to amend it, be sure that any amendment makes it more disciplined, not less disciplined.
That was Richard Darman, the President's Budget Director, who will be our guest on The World Today, and that's coming up next hour. 6 p.m. Eastern, it begins.
President Bush promoted his budget revival plan in Philadelphia today, speaking to business leaders at a hotel. Outside, unemployed carpenters and their supporters staged a protest. Some carried signs saying, "Where's the jobs?" Among the budget proposals Mr. Bush sent to Congress is one that may benefit thousands of jobless people in another industry. Jim Hill has that story from Portland, Maine.
The sleek hulls and polished trim on these Sabre 34s, Pearson 39s, and Grand Bank trawlers should be sailing well and by.
This is a new Grand Bank 36 trawler.
But instead, they're sitting high and dry in this Portland, Maine showroom. Here, business has reportedly dropped 80% since the luxury tax became law in January 1991.
There's no question we've lost sales due to the luxury tax. We had many people this year who talked about new boats, and they're waiting to see whether the luxury tax is going to be repealed or not.
As it now stands, the luxury tax is 10% on the cost of a boat over $100,000, a private plane over $250,000, or a car over $30,000. President Bush has proposed keeping the tax on cars, but eliminating it for planes and boats. Currently, if you bought this boat, the luxury tax alone would be $37,000. But Carl Traub bought it just before the tax went into effect.
My decision to my boat dealer was that if we couldn't make it under the luxury tax, that I wasn't going to buy the boat. It was just that simple.
It would appear anyone who could afford a boat like this could well afford to pay the luxury tax on it. But tax critics say there's a trickle-down effect, and people on the receiving end of that cannot afford it. It's estimated up to 20,000 people lost their jobs when the wind went out of luxury yacht sales. Here in the Sabre Yacht Factory, the 195 workers who used to make these high-end luxury boats are gone. Vessels that once brought yearly sales of $12 million now sit half-finished.
The tax was a definite factor in our bank seizing the funds of our company and putting us out of business. They cited the luxury tax on 2 different occasions in their documents.
Sabre may be lucky. An investor group has reportedly agreed to reopen it if the luxury tax is repealed. But even a tax repeal won't guarantee smooth sailing. As long as the recession lingers, cash sales are likely to stay low and boat sales rather limp. Jim Hill for CNN, Portland, Maine.
Last Friday, Janet Kirch of Pennsylvania did a foolish thing. She dropped a bank envelope into the mailbox. The envelope contained $2,700 in cash. Kirch didn't realize what she'd done until a day later. She reported it, but figured the money was gone. She figured wrong. A postal employee working in the Philadelphia dead letter office found the envelope and the cash and told his boss. Kirch was quickly reunited with her money. She says the incident makes her believe in people again.
I should say, still to come on Early Prime. After more than 3 million miles in space, the shuttle Discovery touches Earth again.
We'll profile Chinese Premier Li Peng. He's to travel to New York for the UN Security Council summit. Many accuse him of backing the Tiananmen Square killings.
And singer Bonnie Raitt attends a very special ceremony in Hollywood. We'll tell you what was so special about it when we come back.
TWA introduces low business flyer fares for business travelers who are really serious about saving money. Fly coast to coast with these low TWA fares on first class, business class, or coach. Or connect to 60 cities through TWA's convenient St. Louis hub. You can also take advantage of TWA's low business flyer fares to Europe. All fares are refundable without the usual penalties and restrictions. For reservations, call your travel agent or TWA at 1-800-221-2000.
Usually, when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct. All we cut is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
Look at these red marks. These old glasses do nothing but pinch. They're a pain.
You don't have to put up with glasses that don't fit anymore.
Now LensCrafters brings you better fit for greater comfort. LensCrafters glasses fit your snug points with features like new self-adjusting snug fit pads that flex to gently and securely hug your nose.
No more pinching. I never knew glasses could be this comfortable.
LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort. In about an hour. Car and Driver magazine declared its road manners are in the import vein, but comfort is better. And if you're wondering what else they have to say about the new Oldsmobile 88 Royale, call 1-800-332-OLDS. We'll send you their complete test drive evaluation on videocassette, free. Because when Car and Driver says the new 88 has hit the elusive style mark, it deserves more of your time than we can give it here. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
Ricola, the all-natural herb cough drop imported from Switzerland. Ricola has been soothing throats and relieving coughs naturally for over 60 years.
13 people who served on the Warren Commission say the time has come to release all government documents on the Kennedy assassination. The Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated President Kennedy and that he acted alone. The 13 lawyers and former commission staffers say they stand by the Warren Commission's findings, but they say they want to help resolve other people's doubts about whether there was a conspiracy to kill the president.
Workers from other countries say they dislike working in Japan. According to a poll by the world's largest bank, more than 90% of the 300 workers surveyed by the Japanese bank say they are unhappy with their working conditions and the environment. They complained about numerous and unproductive meetings and about the length of time it takes the Japanese to make a decision. But the workers from other nations praised Japanese honesty and patience. Ireland's Prime Minister Charles Haughey announced today that he intends to resign. Haughey's leadership has been plagued by scandal. Most recent demands for his resignation were prompted by allegations that he lied about tapping the telephones of journalists back in 1982. Haughey has faced other accusations over the years, though, including questionable land deals and allegations that he supplied arms to the Irish Republican Army. Haughey is 66. He's serving his 4th term as Prime Minister, and he says he will resign next week after a successor is named.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin is due to arrive in the United States any time now. On his way from Moscow, Mr. Yeltsin stopped off in London to meet with British Prime Minister John Major. The two signed a declaration of military and economic cooperation. Tomorrow, the Russian president is scheduled to address the United Nations Security Council for the first time. Mr. Yeltsin will join President Bush and other top world leaders tomorrow at an unprecedented UN Security Council summit. Among those also attending, Chinese Premier Li Peng, who will meet with President Bush for the first time since the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. More on Li's visit from CNN's Mike Chenoy.
He was the man who announced the imposition of martial law in Beijing, the Chinese leader most closely identified with the bloody crackdown on the Tiananmen Square democracy movement in June 1989. But today, 2.5 years later, Prime Minister Li Peng has confounded a hostile public and a skeptical world by not only surviving politically, but by leading China out of its post-Tiananmen Square diplomatic isolation.
Premier Li Peng is a very wily and very intelligent politician in his own right. He's a very intelligent man, much more intelligent than people may give him credit for.
Li Peng's participation at the United Nations Summit will be just the latest in a series of moves that have helped China's communist leadership regain its place in the world, from Secretary of State Baker to British Prime Minister John Major to Japan's then Prime Minister Toshiki Kaifu. Li has hosted a series of high-level visitors in Beijing. And from trips to New Delhi and Moscow and beyond, he has traveled the world, underscoring Beijing's determination to flex its muscles on the international stage. On the domestic front, too, Prime Minister Li has some solid achievements to his credit. Since Tiananmen Square, the Chinese leadership has managed to keep the lid on politically, yet still move ahead with market-oriented economic changes. And there is increasing talk, even from hardliners like Li, of the need to accelerate reform. To be sure, Li Peng presides over what is still a harsh communist dictatorship. But the relatively stable situation in China does stand in sharp contrast to the chaos in the former Soviet Union. Now, Li Peng is set to hobnob here with the world's most powerful leaders and to hold a much sought-after one-on-one meeting with President Bush. It is an immense boost to his prestige, and with China's elder statesman Deng Xiaoping now 87 years old, many diplomats and analysts believe it will increase Li Peng's chances of emerging as the country's paramount leader once the old guard in Beijing passes from the scene. Mike Chenoy, CNN at the United Nations.
20 years after the Watergate break-in, former Nixon White House counsel John Dean and his wife, Maureen, have filed a libel and slander suit against 4 people who say Dean was the mastermind behind the break-in. The Deans are asking for $50 million. 3 of the defendants are the authors of the book Silent Coup, The Removal of a President. Also being sued, Watergate conspirator G. Gordon Liddy. Liddy made a similar charge against Dean in his autobiography. The books claim that after the foiled break-in, Dean initiated the cover-up.
Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards has hired his worst enemy as Inspector General, Bill Lynch. He and Edwards locked horns 20 years ago in Edwards' first term. Lynch was a reporter who wrote about Edwards' alleged corruption. He later became Inspector General for Governor Buddy Roemer. Edwards promised to keep Lynch on to get votes. He got a surprise. Lynch accepted, but says it's only to keep an eye on the governor.
Former White House Chief of Staff John Sununu expects to make big bucks in his next job, whatever it is. Sununu says he wants at least $3.5 million. The salary figure was revealed when Spy magazine pulled a fast one on Sununu. The magazine's publisher says he called him last month pretending to be a corporate headhunter. He quotes Sununu as saying any jobs would have to wait until he finished a speech-making tour paying a couple of $1 million, as Sununu put it. When the ruse was revealed by the Washington Post, Sununu said he didn't think he got hoaxed.
Still to come on Early Prime, this dog proved he's a boy's best friend.
Scientists question whether surgery is the best option to prevent strokes.
And pumping up a balloon pumps hope for an around-the-world adventure.
CNN News Quiz is brought to you by New Centrum Silver, a specially formulated complete multivitamin for adults over 50.
Now's the time for Centrum Silver, the multivitamin made just for you and your changing nutritional needs. Centrum Silver, because you're over